Howdy folks, this is Laurie Gombos from Outback Motortech. I'd like to show you the first design of our Ducati Multistrada V4 crash bars. So what you're seeing here is just a pure first, absolutely non-final design. There's nothing finalized on this piece. Also, it is only spot welded just to demonstrate a potential look for you, okay? So this is not production version, not even pre-production version, just the first ever beta version. Okay, so ignore the spot welds. What you're seeing here is a hybrid solution, because you can actually separate the top set of crash bars from the lower. You have the option to choose from, or you will have the option to choose from. Some people like a full coverage set of crash bars, essentially from the beak down all the way to the bottom of the engine. Okay, and some people just like a low profile set of crash bars. Okay, they like the minimalist design more than the full coverage. But then, of course, the full coverage gives you more protection. So pros and cons. Okay, the other thing to know about this, we always try to avoid using the engine as anchor points, as mounting points. It's not always feasible though, it's not always an option. With the new Multistrada V4, we came up with a solution where we can utilize some parts of the frame and some parts of the engine. Now, the engine mounting points that we ended up using, they look very, very, very sturdy. We believe that this is also the mounting points that Ducati uses for their original crash bars. So they have a place for a reason. Okay, so one being up here, very sturdy. If I recall, it's a 10 millimeter diameter bolt goes in there, so it's pretty heavy duty. Down over here, it's also the engine that we utilize, an engine mounting point. It's kind of tucked away, but it's also a very sturdy piece back there. Okay, the rest is frame mounted. So down here, we also have the frame extension, and that's where we tie the lower crash bar's lower end to, or into. And up here, this is something special because the designs we've seen so far from other manufacturers, nobody has been able to come up with a set of upper crash bars because the bike lacks mounting points. We did manage to find mounting points for the upper crash bars. So here we have a large cross brace. Currently it's pieced together only, so ignore that part too. But actually it reaches far up and it ties into the frame down here. It ties into right there. Okay, so it's part of the frame. It's a frame extension, is super heavy duty. For the crash bars, we use a 25 millimeter diameter tubing, both the top and bottom. The mounting brackets on this side and up here will be made of 6 millimeter thick steel, so it's going to be very, very resistant, and it can absorb impact very well. Then there's this tubing sticking out here. It's also 25 millimeter diameter, and all over it's 2 millimeter thick tubing, steel tubing. At this point, we're not sure if we're gonna need to add a cross brace here. There is a chance for it, but for now, we haven't decided. We're gonna leave this option open. Now, the other thing that we wanted to achieve is a supporting arm for the lower crash bars for the horizontal part, because without this supporting arm, the lower crash bars would bend way too much. So we actually now have a triangular shape, or a triangular mounting point structure, 1, 2, and 3. This part, we're not sure about it yet. It actually covers the turn signal a little bit, so we may end up changing the design. We think that this tubing is not going to run here. It's going to go back up a bit further and follow this line on the side panel and then drop down to the bracket up front. There's one more thing that we wanted to pay attention to is here are these little spoilers. They are directed right in the engine. They have very important cooling features for the V4. And of course, we did our best to avoid blocking it with tubing. But what this lower part also does is it offers coverage for the fragile and vulnerable spoilers. So should you drop your bike, even on concrete, for example, just in a parked position, sometimes people wash their bikes and it just tips over. And I mean, there are hundreds of scenarios how you can drop your bike, and it's one of them. You don't have to go off-roading to drop your bike. Sometimes it happens in the most unexpected situations, like just a simple driveway, silly parking job. And so this can easily break off. This can easily break off. And being a Ducati, you can imagine that the price is likely not the cheapest out there. So there you go. There's less to protect. One thing that we think is also very important feature that the upper crash bars can offer is not so much protection for the side panel. Of course, it's very important, but it's really important to protect what's behind it, and this is the radiator fan and the motor. Now these are pretty exposed. They stick out quite far, and one little drop and then you can say goodbye to the fan and the motor, and that's also something that you got to reach really deep into your pocket to pay for. So the upper crash bars are also here to offer protection for this vulnerable and of course expensive component. So this is it overall. I will now remove the upper crash bars so you can have a good view, a good look at the lower crash bars alone. Let's get to it. All right, here we go. Here's the second part of this video, the continuation of introducing our potential set of crash bars for the Multistrada V4. So now you can see the lower crash bars alone. Obviously it leaves the upper part of the cowling, the plastic panel. It leaves it more exposed, hence more vulnerable. But as I mentioned before, many people do like the minimalist appearance, minimalist approach. One thing you may notice is that these little spoilers that I explained to you before, the little spoilers, they actually the lower one sticks out pretty far. You can see that it sticks out almost about 2 inches, about 5-6 centimeters out wide, wider than this part of the plastic panel. So that's why the lower bar down here, this connecting arm strut, also sticks further out. Not by too much, but it still does. But there's nothing we can do, and we definitely don't want to leave this sticking out further than the actual tubing. So let me show you from a different angle. It's not too bad. The other thing we don't want to end up doing, just to compensate for this spoiler's width, is we don't want the crash bars to reach out too far, because that, you know, a massive gap would just, it wouldn't look too appealing. So yeah, it's the same features, you know. It's still the same 25 millimeter diameter tubing. It's still 2 millimeter thickness as well, wall thickness, and the same 6 millimeter thick steel brackets. Now some people might think, hey, why don't we just reach up further high and exclude a new set of upper crash bars? Well, of course it could be done. The only thing is then we would need a cross brace, and the cross brace would need to shoot across here, but then it would actually block this radiator, and there wouldn't be too much room for a cross brace tubing running here. And then there's also the potential risk of, you know, there's a crash and the cross brace moves and it gets pushed against the radiator, and it's a fragile part. So that's a risk for sure that we're not sure if we want to take. Typically we use cross braces, but on this bike up top it's not feasible. Down here it could run in front of the exhaust manifold, but at this point we don't think that's going to be necessary. So this is our input regarding a lower crash bar that reaches up high without the upper extension. So that'd be nice. We'd like to do that. Some bikes just don't allow that part, not reasonably and not responsibly, because, you know, the further you reach away from the anchor points, the more the tubing is going to flex, and if it flexes too much, we could smash this one, or the tubing could smash the panel, the turn signal, and potentially the radiator motor and the radiator itself. So that would be pretty bad damage, and we don't want that either. Do leave us a comment. Your input will be much appreciated. Thank you very much for watching, people. Thank you, much appreciated, and looking forward to hearing from you. Oh yes, colors in the future, of course, when it comes to production, we'll be producing crash bars in red, hopefully matching Ducati red. Of course, it's always hard to decide whether we match this or this. It's not exactly the same color, not exactly the same red shade on the plastic panel versus on the subframe, but that's an option. That will be an option. Of course, black as well, and potentially matte aluminum or matte silver, something like this, or something like this. So that's that. Thank you again for watching, and I wish you all a good day, good evening, good morning, depending on your time zone. Cheers.